All right. Hi, Mitchell. Thank you so much for joining us today on Vonvo.com, and thanks for allowing David to use your computer. David was on our site a few days ago, and he has allowed you to now come experience your first Vonvo. How are you, and how is everything going on right now where you're located? Maybe give me some specifics of where exactly you are in Israel right now.
Well, I'm in Herzliya. It's a little bit north of Tel Aviv. It's a fairly quiet, sort of beach community. So it's fairly safe here. No real threats north of Tel Aviv, of course. But just south of Tel Aviv, where a lot of IDC students are living, there have been missiles. Today there was bus bombing. Thank God no one died, but there were injuries that weren't needed.
And what did you make of when you heard the news of the bus bombing? What exactly went through your head?
Well, I had just been. It was just a normal day for me. I was sitting there watching some Seinfeld, and
Nice.
my roommate comes in. He's like, "There was a bus bombing," and I immediately jumped out of bed. I was like, "What? What happened?" I was worried if some of my friends living there were on that bus. And it's just, those are real dangers living here in Israel. You have to, expect, account for.
Of course.
But
So,
I searched the news, made sure I found out exactly what happened.
yep. And as of right now, have any friends of yours been around that bus, or by God forbid, on that bus?
No, no, no. Thank God everyone was away. No one was on that particular bus.
Okay.
But there were friends that take that route.
Of course.
It's just crazy to think that,
Yeah. No. And so, basically, why don't you give me a little quick background, of yourself? So you're originally American. You're from St. Louis. Um, how did you decide to end up in Israel? How long have you been there, and what are you doing exactly? Just are you in college or?
all right, yeah. So basically, I did a semester here in high school, just as like an exchange program, like see the world sort of thing.
Okay.
I came to IDC, I visited, ran into a friend. I just love the school. I love the fact that I can study, counterterrorism and international relations in the area that it's all going on. And that's just, a huge plus, especially as an American, because most kids my age are, partying in different schools, having a great time, like learning here and there. But they don't
Hmm.
get to, like, go to Tel Aviv whenever they want, go
Yeah.
see what's going on. They can't just go down south in Israel. And I have the benefit. And I'm studying government, specifically counterterrorism and international relations. So learning from like the best of the best in the field, like high-profile Israeli commanders and stuff.
Hmm.
So it's just great.
So you're studying that those subjects in school right now, and living in the actual country, seeing what is actually going down, in that country. Um, you know, what's really the general overall feeling that goes through you, since you're there as a foreigner. How do you feel for these people right now, for Israelis? How do you feel for Palestinians? What's your overall emotion in terms of or feeling in terms of this conflict going on right now?
Well, it's just generally, I guess the best word would be upsetting because these are two people that are, two peoples, Palestinians and Israelis, that could peacefully coexist. And for I don't want to get into the entire conflict because that'll take way too long. But basically, there's no real agreement on much, and keeps escalating into conflicts. And yeah,
And
does that answer it?
yeah, well, what? So do overall, is there one core problem of why they don't agree on much? What is it all? What do you think it all stems from? Their disagreements. Do you think it's religion at this point, land, life? What, you want to give me some insight into that, or what your take is?
Well, I think it's all three. really. Religion, of course, they're opposing religion. Both religions believe that, only theirs is supposed to have control of this land. About life and land, of course, both sides, it's an intractable conflict. Both sides are never going to agree on who should have the land. It's not like Israel's going to be like, oh, no, 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 you take it. It's not like the Palestinians are just going to hand it over.
Mm-hmm.
So, as long as these two sides can't, come to an agreement on some common ground, this is just going to keep going.
Yeah.
And it's the basis of their, basis of who they are as a people that separates them.
Exactly. Okay. And so knowing that that's the case, I mean, is that just the overall general feeling is that most Israelis just don't ever see an end to this? And I mean, don't you think it being the 21st century, it's really time to just put aside some differences and especially kind of some that really from an outsider seem really immature, at least on my end. And I mean that might be irrational to say, but just seeing how long this has gone on for, what's your take on this? Being such a new age and this shit still going down. Isn't it time to grow up at some point?
Personally, I think it's time to grow up and get to some sort of peaceful agreement. It doesn't need to be what both sides want 100%, but it needs to be something that is the best for all the people living in this area. It needs to be something that's going to get rid of armed conflict, going to get rid of the senseless hatred between Palestinians and Israelis.
Mm-hmm.
And the general feeling here is that Israel's willing to concede a little bit as long as the Palestinians are willing to concede a little bit to meet at some middle ground.
Yep.
There are different aspects of a two-state solution, or whether it's through a two-state solution or occupation, or just other just straight negotiations. But Hamas has escalated a bit, and so it's just harder to actually meet and do those negotiations.
Yep. Of course. And I mean, that's definitely been a lot of the talk around the news over here. Why don't we transition into that? You're an American. You're familiar with plenty of the different, corporate television stations here in the U.S., CNN, Fox, NBC, etc. What's your take on, from the outside looking in and now being in Israel, the amount of publicity this this topic, this subject gets? What's your take on that in the whole media realm?
Well, of course, every news agency has their biases in one direction or the other. CNN, BBC, Fox, generally, pro-Israel, anti-Israel. I try to stay away from American news, which is kind of weird to say because when I was in America, I followed it consistently. But now that I'm here, I can actually see the difference between what CNN and Fox are saying and what, just not even non-news sources. Like what I follow for my news, it's this blog. It's just completely objective. Just what happened, what's confirmed, at what time, and you just make your own sort of sense out of it.
Yeah, and so what I would love
sort of shifted away from listening to American news, opinionated media.
Totally. So can you go into detail on that? I mean, I think that I find that very interesting. What are you seeing differently once you're inside the country versus what, let's say, you're getting here on the news? That I would be getting here on the news. That's right to my left over here. That they're reporting. What's different?
Well, specifically speaking, CNN, which it's fairly weird for me to say because that was the channel I watched the most.
That's what I have on right here.
When I came here, and I see a picture on Facebook of a guy being carried away, and then 5 minutes later, he's caught in the background of another video, and he's just walking away completely fine, unharmed. It was just completely staged.
Uh-huh.
And obviously that's not happening here. Like, you know, if you're injured, you're injured. You don't just get back up and walk away.
But the fact that
Also, just like the reporting of what's actually going on in Gaza, like who's firing rockets when, who's being killed when, I find that a lot of the time it's just generally false. Like, there have even been reports of like, you know, there was like a picture of someone who was killed, and apparently they were killed in some conflict with Syria like 4 years back.
Mm-hmm. So okay, very interesting. Um, so that's ultimately that's one of the things that our company here Vonvo is looking to provide people with. We're looking to empower citizens journalism. Uh, you know, allow basically people with an opinion that are in on the action or subject trending current events that's going on. You know, allow them to have a voice and give people an alternative to uh, corporate television and news by hearing, real life opinions of, the primary resource, right, as they call it, I believe.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. You know, instead of having people that are paid to do interviews and reporting, trying to get that shock value, just interview, the average person that's actually seeing what's going on and get, what's going on the streets, what's actually happening instead of what you assume is happening.
Perfect. Very good. So very interesting, by the way, because I appreciate that since that's kind of what our website revolves around. So, do you see any justification in what Hamas, does these days? Do you totally put the blame on them? Do you put it on smaller militant groups within Palestine? What's your overall take, and do you see any justification?
When you say justification,
so the fact that they've been, let's say,
when you
firing.
say justification, do you mean like? I'm sorry, we keep getting caught.
No problem. Go ahead.
When you say justification, do you mean like there's two different rationales as to what's happening. The Israelis will never understand, why do they keep bombing us? But to the Palestinians, they're bombing for a reason, to support their cause, and we're fighting back to support our cause. And since it's an intractable conflict, those two causes are opposing. And so, technically, yes, in Hamas's mind, they have complete reason for what they're doing, but internationally speaking, I would have to say no. Even the U.S. has declared them as a terrorist group.
Mm-hmm.
So, internationally speaking, no. I don't think there's any reasoning for what they should be doing. They're firing on a state as and by international law, it's difficult to know whether or not Hamas should be treated as a national entity in which Israel can actually respond, as in like a normal conflict, or whether it's just a group of people hiding in schools and hospitals firing missiles aimlessly at civilians.
Yep. I think that's well said. I mean, it really just depends on what side you're looking at it from, and knowing that there's these two two ends of the spectrum and major differences in what each side believes. I mean, and you kind of being a young student, just sort of looking at this, what do you think then is the approach to resolving those differences? Is it possible? Do you see a middle ground?
Well, that's a tough question to answer because, I always hope for the best. I always hope for middle ground. But between these groups, I think that until the radicalization is, dialed down a little bit and people are brought back down to just basic core beliefs that can be negotiated with, or, until they have a basic plan, what they're going to do, and a basic understanding, I don't think it can be done in the near future. I think that it's going to take time and lots of, not negotiations like you see in the news, but actual negotiations where you sit down, you make a deal, can't walk away.
Mm-hmm.
It just needs to get done.
Makes sense. Um, so I guess what I would ask next then, since we kind of went into we kind of went into the whole concept behind um, a solution. Why don't we talk about what's exactly going on in Israel? What's the Israeli government telling you in terms of like a ground invasion or just airstrikes? What's the U.S. government, since you are American and you're just there studying? So, do you want to give me some insight into that? What exactly is being reported to you?
Um, what the Israeli government's saying?
Yeah. What are they
The
saying?
Israeli government's saying. I'm sorry.
Yeah. What are they saying?
They're just reporting exactly what's happening. Obviously, emphasizing the amount of missiles that have been fired. It's a bit confusing as to, I can't really gauge whether or not there's going to be an actual ground invasion anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
But I have friends that were in the military waiting all up for reserves, and they're predicting. They've had the experience. I unfortunately haven't. They have. They're pretty confident that there should be some ground
Really?
invasion soon, but it's been very vague on the news as to what's going to happen. Mostly just trying to gain international support for what's going on here.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I appreciate that. The prediction that these soldiers have, let's say, shared with you. Um, so, what's the main thing that you believe people should know? Um, about what, let's say, they're hearing in the media, but is not being shared, and is actually, you can only witness by hearing it from the actual source. What's like the main things that you kind of would like to share with people that they should know about this entire conflict and what maybe is causing the Palestinians to do this?
I think that what everyone needs to understand is that it's not as though Israel is really oppressing these people into one small area and they're just living in like some sort of like ghetto scenario. Like, basically what it is that Gaza is a closed territory.
Got it.
But the Palestinian Authority there is not actually like a nation yet. So Israel, again, like I said earlier with the international law fiasco, as to what exactly Israel can do and Israel can't do. Like, if you want to picture it, it's basically as though the cartel in Mexico is firing missiles at America from Mexico. And there's nothing America can do to go in there without international outcry, but they just keep getting hit and getting hit and getting hit. And, the cartel is just aiming it at any southern town, just where there's a massive population. Like here, even concerts have been canceled because that would unfortunately be a prime target.
Mm-hmm.
And, so everyone's like been told to stay inside, avoid large gatherings. Like, we're living with rules that a normal society shouldn't have to deal with.
Got it. And so you make that Mexican cartel comparison, and I just so that people understand, I kind of want to just go into it. So you're saying that even like, because when you think about Mexico, like there definitely is an established government. That would be the one difference you'd say between that and Palestine. Like it's a lot more organized. Let's say in Mexico, and you have these cartels shooting the missiles versus Palestine. It's a less organized government in Hamas, and then you have those cartels of Palestine shooting missiles into Israel. Is that it?
Well, for the purpose of my analogy, I would just say that, ignoring the Mexican government.
Yeah.
Just like the cartels have their own area.
Uh-huh.
And they're just like a nation. They don't have a state. They don't have a territory. But
Yeah.
they are a group, and they are an enemy that needs to be targeted. But when you don't have a specific area, you don't have a specific, what do you call it? Like terms of war, like rules that are set up to deal with this sort of scenario. It makes every step you need to make a lot harder.
Yeah.
It makes everything much more difficult to deal with because in the end, like Israel doesn't want to just go in and wipe out Gaza. That
Yeah.
wouldn't be good for anyone. There's like innocent Palestinians there that are just living their life. But then again, there's Hamas, which is running them, which is a terrorist organization, and shooting missiles from schools, hospitals, civilian areas, using civilians as human shields. And that makes the IDF's job of just even policing the area and maintaining it 1,000 times more difficult.
It makes a lot of sense. And I see exactly where you're coming from. And I can understand why it's just such a delicate situation. That really requires a lot of thought before just going ahead and taking any action. Um, so, what do you get? What's the consensus from your eyes of how Israelis feel that concerts get canceled and just the idea that a normal life can't even really be lived at this point? Because some of the people that I've spoken to kind of stress on that point. And what do you think people should know about how unfortunate that is?
Well, sort of an unfortunate truth is that Israelis are used to this. Like, there hasn't been more than a 5-year period where Israel hasn't been involved in some sort of, armed conflict. And so people are pretty prepared. Everyone's been to the military. Like, as far as don't go to crowded areas, the night of the first bombing, there was supposed to be a house party nearby me, and, it was canceled, but we went anyways just because it was friends of ours. And people came more and more and more, and it just became like everyone sort of stood together. Everyone understood what was going on. Obviously, no one's like throwing massive outdoor concerts or anything because that's just a bad idea.
Yeah.
But people don't really worry. There's like a sense of solidarity here.
Yeah. And what's your sense of how Palestinians live inside Gaza, inside the West Bank? I mean, you hear a lot on the news that it's a very densely populated area. Obviously, and I believe this is a true statement, like Israel supplies them with all their power or electricity and water. But what's the sense that you've gotten of how they live? Because you kind of just touched on that before.
Well, yeah, it is an overpopulated area, but Tokyo is as well. I've seen pictures of Gaza, and honestly, I saw them, and if I wouldn't have seen, if I wouldn't have seen Arabic written, I would have assumed it was a part of Tel Aviv. It looks exactly the same. It is like a giant, massive city in itself. And also, Israel does provide, I believe, power, water, all the utilities, as well as while this conflict has been going on, they've been bringing in shipments of food and water for the people there.
Yep. So, I mean, that it's like you said before, you don't get the impression that it's Israel wanting to wipe Gaza off the map as it is just getting rid of these small terrorists who continue to just fire these, short-range missiles into civilian areas. That's really that's all the impression you get of what they are trying to do.
I'd say what Israel's main goal is now is to rid them of the violent aspect of Hamas. The political aspect, I'm not exactly sure what they're going to do with, but they definitely like to establish like a neutral Palestinian authority there, just as like a sense of goodwill. And hopefully that moves on to further peace talks and, God willing, an end to all of this.
Got it. Okay, makes sense.
But no, I would definitely say that there's no sense that Israel wants to just completely annihilate Gaza.
And just, I mean, coming from America, and 1 second, let me just plug my computer in. What I was going to say is just to share with people as an American studying over there, what is just knowing that you have no idea how this could end. What really is the exact feeling you're having day in and day out? I mean, are you just confused of the unknown or more scared? Can you just tell us how that feels?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I was saying just in terms of having no idea what's going to happen tomorrow. As an American, how do you exactly feel not just the unknown of being in the country you're in right now?
Well, I may be a bit naive, but I feel 100% completely safe. There's no like, it's not like in 1984, the book where there's like police cars driving constantly through the streets, making sure people are in their homes. It's a normal city. Like, people are walking their dogs, going to the grocery store just as normal. But when the siren goes off, ears perk up. And so I feel completely safe, especially knowing that Herzliya is a bit out of Hamas's range.
Mm-hmm.
But for those in Tel Aviv who aren't, I feel secure in the fact that the odds of getting hit are fairly low. And also Iron Dome is doing a great job of keeping missiles from falling in near civilian areas.
Yeah, and so have those sirens gone off in Herzliya, and what was your feelings then when that happened? What exactly happened when the sirens went off?
I haven't heard a siren actually.
Okay.
But I did hear a car alarm go off the other day, and there was this one woman who panicked, but everyone just kind of looked at her like, "What's wrong with you?" Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
There's no real danger here. But I did hear Iron Dome intercept a few.
What was that like? Was that just like a boom, or what is that? What happens when that occurs?
Well, it was like a completely clear day. The sky, beautiful blue day, and out of nowhere you just hear like this massive crack of thunder. It was, the rocket exploding in midair. And, I heard it, I was like, what was that? That's scary, but my friend was like, that was Iron Dome, and like as soon as he said Iron Dome, I just felt immediately safer.
Yeah, I can imagine. That makes sense. Okay. How long have you been in Israel for right now, studying? How many months has it been?
Well, I'm in my third year, so like 26 months, I think.
Oh, so you've been there since your freshman year of school.
Yeah.
Okay, and so have you met any? Have you met any Palestinians that you're friends with, Arabs that you're friends with, just people of the other ethnicity that you go to school with? What goes on with that? People living side by side.
Well, in my particular school, I don't think I've met any Palestinians because just unfortunately the Israeli side and the international side don't really mix that often. But yeah, I have friends of Arab descent and with Arab families, and they're just like people like you and me. Like we like the same movies, we like same sense of humor, same foods. And I haven't talked to them about how they feel about this, but just by gauging their reactions to things, I don't see a lot of hatred or anything. There's a lot of just like, when will this end?
That's really the sense that you get. Okay. So let's move on then into a few other things. 1 second. So what's your opinion on the U.S.'s stance and how Obama's kind of shown a direct support for Israel so far? What's your take on that matter? And what do you think we should be doing as the U.S.? What do you think?
Well, I'm very glad that the U.S. has decided to back Israel because it's a big country, very powerful country, not only in like hard power militarily, if this were to escalate in a full war, but also in their political power around the world. Like people see America follow something and they're like, okay, let's give Israel a chance. And that's a great feeling to have. And I wasn't entirely shocked that the president decided to back Israel because this is the only democracy in the Middle East. And since America has been dubbed the nickname, the leader of the free world, it is America's duty to make sure that democracies around the world are protected, and I think Barack Obama's done a great job with that.
Okay, cool. And just so you know, I mean, I'm looking at my TV here, and it looks like that bomb explosion has injured 22 people, which is pretty frightening. And I see the picture of the bus right now. I don't know if you've heard that already, though.
Last I checked, it was 10, but that was like literally 5 minutes after it happened.
Okay.
But also, I saw a picture of the bus, and there was no hole in the side. It was just the windows were blown out.
Yeah.
So hopefully the people aren't too injured.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure the facts will kind of be delivered in over the coming hours of exactly what happened. You're an educated individual, and you know.
I did read.
Yeah, go ahead.
That it wasn't Hamas.
You did read that it was Hamas?
It was not Hamas.
Oh, okay. So then they could.
It was Hamas was surprised the fact that the bus had blown up, and they are claiming it was Fatah.
Okay, can you go into who Fatah is, please?
Fatah is the armed side of the PLO, and mostly in the West Bank. They're the ones that are responsible for all like intifadas and violence in the past years. Just a very militant group. I don't know. What else would you like to know? I can be specific.
Yeah. So Fatah is just a militant group. Are they considered a political party? Like when Hamas won their election, were they running against Fatah? Do they have a common enemy, Fatah, and like does Hamas like Fatah or no?
Fatah is seen as a bit of a radical group. They're part of the PLO, so that's their political side. So it'd be PLO against Hamas, but it's not really an against because all Arab, all Palestinian. So there's like a sense of union in there.
Mm-hmm.
And they do have the common enemy, which is Israel, but each side, opposes Israel for slightly different reasons. But on the basically anti-Israel.
Got it. So next thing I was going to ask is, it seems like one of the major things that Palestinians want or Hamas wants is the blockade that is going on right now in Gaza. They would want that lifted. Do you think that that's something that the Israelis should compromise in for a ceasefire?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Someone was at the door.
Oh, in regards to a ceasefire, do you think the Israelis should lift their blockade on Gaza in order to attain one?
That's a tough question because, of course, I'm in favor of the idea of a ceasefire. And ending the violence is good because that leaves way for negotiations. And also, when things get violent, they get escalated a lot quicker.
Yep.
Get more upset. But as far as removing the blockade, I don't feel like that's going to happen because if we remove the blockade, any country, such as Iran even, would be able to be in warships that would be on the coast of Gaza and eventually rights Israel.
Yep. All right. And what's your opinion on how Egypt's played a role in all of this with their new their new president? And I guess it's interesting. Like it would be interesting to talk about kind of how there's just a whole revamped Middle East with that whole Arab Spring that occurred, right? And now it's like this is the first conflict going on. Isn't that interesting? It must be an interesting topic for you to like study on, correct?
Oh, yeah, the Arab Spring was definitely like all my teachers had a heyday with that. Just loved it.
Really?
Loved analyzing it, how it's going to affect Israel, what's going on. But it's a little bit difficult to gauge right now as to how it's going to exactly react with this conflict because once an actual nation gets involved with Israel, it's a war. It's like an actual war then.
Mm-hmm.
So like Egypt can't because we have the peace accords with them, and also they know that we would come in. Jordan we have peaceful relations with. The biggest fear I'd have to say is Hezbollah,
which is in Lebanon, right?
They are heavily armed, well trained, much more dangerous than Hamas, who's trapped in Gaza. They have Lebanon. They're free to enter from the north at any point. And with Hezbollah coming in, and then Hamas coming up in the south, it'd just be a bad situation.
Yeah, and so, I mean, what do you, I mean, just as, an educated individual, can you give us some insight into, are Hamas and Hezbollah and Egypt at all connected, with the whole Muslim Brotherhood? Is Fatah more connected with Hezbollah? And you want to just give a background of how that kind of works, please? If you know.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm used to just talking about these things with teachers and people in my class. So
yeah, no problem.
If I'm being unspecific, let me know. There's the three groups. There's the PLO, which Fatah is part of. There's Hamas, and then there's Hezbollah, which are three different organizations. All I deem them as terrorist organizations. The international community thinks otherwise. But those are the three groups that are anti-Israel. Those are the three terrorist organizations. And, the PLO is mostly in the West Bank. Hamas is in Gaza. Hezbollah has Lebanon and a bit of Syria. In Syria also, there's that's a big worry about Syria coming in.
Now, isn't it just okay? No, I mean it's funny that you bring up Syria because isn't it just wild that, let's say, the Israeli-Palestinian, it's getting a lot of attention, and it should get a lot of attention because it's ongoing. But isn't it? Give me your take on this. In the American media, it's almost like Syria has taken a back seat, and yet over 20,000, I think, civilians have been killed. Like, what does that even tell us about our world right now in that region? Like, it's not even reported. Like, what does that even tell us?
It's a bit sickening, honestly, that there is a conflict in Israel that is going on. Yes, that should be reported on fairly, but then again, there's this atrocity going on in Syria, and people are just being, mass murdered there. And the news feels that they can make more money off of discussing Israel because when people hear Israel, they automatically tune in. When they hear Syria, they're just like, I probably don't even know where that is.
Mm-hmm.
But when I hear Israel and Gaza, it's immediate. And it's unfortunate that the news agencies have to sway their stories to their viewership. And I feel like the Syrian situation should be definitely published a lot more, definitely discussed, definitely should get a lot more attention than it is.
Yep. What's your take on how Egypt and Turkey play into all this? Because those are kind of been the two countries that have gotten some attention in terms of brokering peace, and could you go into that?
Well, Egypt has been fairly helpful. I think today it was either today or yesterday, they stopped 180 rockets from crossing the border.
Really? Okay.
So yeah, we have the peace accords with them, and they've been very helpful. Turkey, I unfortunately have not read up on a bunch.
Okay.
But I do know that no other nation is really trying to get involved in this unless it's absolutely necessary.
And what's funny is, I don't think I heard about that either on the news. If there was 180 missiles stopped across the Egypt-Gaza border or West Bank border, I don't think that I've heard that reported. So is that where you got that from, your blog or something that you were talking about before?
Yeah, I got that from the same blog. Which is, your blog doesn't sound like the most credible source, but, the person writing the blog is a credible source. And, it's unfortunate that I can't rely on the news, that I have to go to these private, smaller things. Vonvo is great because it's face to face, you can see what's being said, how it's being said, and get the real truth.
Thank you so much. Yeah, no. I'm glad that you see exactly where we're coming from and what we're trying to promote here. So let's see. In terms of where you think, what you think the strategic objectives here right now are, and where you have soldiers being called back into the reserves. Not sure of what's going to happen. Do you see an end result here? And do you see any like strategic objectives coming from Israel's side in what they're doing? And do you see any strategic objectives from Hamas firing missiles? What's your take on their objectives here?
Well, as far as strategic objectives go, for Israel's side, of course, if this were to turn into, or for what's going on now and for what it may grow into, their objectives are to get rid of the violent Hamas side, clear that out, probably establish some sort of part-time, short-term governing systems until a new government can be set up. And Hamas's side is basically fire rockets, kill Israelis, gain international support, do damage as much as they can until their hope is that Israel sees that they're a serious threat. But what they don't understand is that Israel is a fairly well-developed nation that has an actual army, and Israel's really holding back and really trying to make this as peaceful as possible. And so I said Israel's strategic objectives are peace. Hamas's strategic objectives are to gain international support and to do as much damage and win in the end.
Very good. And so last two things I want to bring up. Can you go into what you've heard over in Israel about stuff such as human shielding? Now there's potentially a bombing on a bus today. Them hiding missiles in playgrounds. What does that get more attention in Israel amongst Israelis? Do Palestinians say that that's false? That doesn't happen? Can you give us some insight into these sort of, I don't think they're conspiracies, but they're just like rumors that go around, but maybe they're actually fact?
Palestinians, I haven't heard exactly what they say about, the fact that they hide missiles in playgrounds and schools and stuff. But Israelis, they know. Like, you don't hear a lot of people repeating it as though they have to convince someone. What Israelis are really trying to do is convince the rest of the world. They're trying to show them, listen, they're using human shields and firing aimlessly at civilians, and actually, the U.S. has, accused Hamas of, dual humanitarian crimes?
Yeah, or
for both of those things.
Yep.
For using human shields and aimlessly shooting rockets into civilian areas.
Yep. Okay.
So as soon as the world, I don't want to say wakes up, but realizes that, Hamas is committing these atrocities, and there's no way, if Hamas uses a person as a human shield, there's no way the IDF can go in and take them out just due to, the rules of engagement internationally. But as far as using schools goes, the second that a missile is fired from a playground or a school, it immediately becomes a combatant zone. So it's okay. So you're going to, Palestinians are saying they're coming into our schools, they're shooting people. That may be true, but it's definitely never when children are there. It's only Hamas, combatants firing missiles, armed people. They booby-trap buildings so that, if a rocket is fired and it, the concussive force sets off a secondary which blows up another building, and then Hamas just claims that Israel blew up this other building as well, which
Mm-hmm.
had like a family living in the floor above.
Yeah.
And so they're really using whatever dirty guerrilla tactics they can, even if it hurts themselves, to make Israel look worse.
Got it. Okay. So why don't we wrap up with this? What is the message that you want to portray to the world, and anyone that were to view this video, about what's going on? And I'll just leave it at that. If you want me to be more specific, I can, but I think you kind of get what I'm saying.
No, I understand. Basically, what I'd like to say to the rest of the world is wake up, realize what's going on here. Don't follow every single news report you see. Go to different sources. Make a real educated decision about how you feel, and understand what's really going on before you make any sort of judgment calls or form an opinion. You need to find objective sources. You need to stray away from the CNNs, the Foxes, the BBCs of the news, and don't completely ignore them, but take what they say with a grain of salt. Definitely analyze when you see something. Don't just be like, "Oh, okay, that happened." Analyze, why did that happen? What made that scenario come about? Just basically research, learn, be educated about the situation. Because at the end of the day, not enough people understand what's going on here, and so there's not enough international support for Israel. But as soon as people understand that, we're actually just fighting terrorists, there will be more support and hopefully a peaceful end to this whole debacle.
Yeah, no, totally. All right, very good. So how does this sound? I'll let you get back to some of your studies. Would you be interested in doing this again by any chance? And potentially with, I have some friends that are very well educated in this space as well. Would you be interested in speaking to them by any chance?
Yeah, that would be good.
Okay, awesome. Is
Definitely
school
very interested.
is school out right now, or is I'm gonna actually let me stop the recording. Okay, 1 second.